The room was designed to intimidate. Polished oak walls, framed battle flags, and portraits of admirals long dead stared down from every angle. At the center stood a horseshoe-shaped table where senior officers gathered for the annual Joint Operations Review. Stars glinted on collars. Coffee sat untouched. Lieutenant Commander Mara Holt stood at the far end of the room, hands clasped behind her back, posture straight but relaxed. She wore no medals on her dress blues, only the standard ribbons required for the briefing. To most of the room, she looked unremarkable, quiet, almost invisible. That was a mistake many people made. Admiral Vernon Blackwood leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, his eyes narrowed with a half-smile that suggested boredom. He had commanded fleets, overseen wars, and buried more sailors than he cared to count. He wasn't impressed easily, especially not by specialists pulled from classified units to brief on special considerations. Mara had just finished her presentation. No theatrics. No inflated language. Just facts, timelines, and outcomes. Efficient. Clean. The silence afterwards stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Finally, the Admiral chuckled. "Well," Blackwood said, breaking the tension, "that was concise." A few officers smiled politely. "Lieutenant Commander Holt, is it?" "Yes, sir." He tapped his pen against the table. "Your file's mostly redacted. That always makes me curious." He paused, his eyes flicking around the room, enjoying the attention. "Tell me something purely out of interest." Mara didn't move. "How many kills do you have?" A few officers laughed, nervous laughter mostly. Someone coughed. Another shifted in his seat. The question hung in the air like a bad smell. Mara had heard worse. In bars. In locker rooms. From men who mistook silence for weakness. She met the Admiral's gaze calmly. "Sir," she said evenly, "may I clarify what you mean by kills?" Blackwood smirked. "You know what I mean. Combat confirmed. You operators keep score, don't you?" The room leaned in without realizing it. Mara nodded once. "Yes, sir. We keep records." "Well then," he said, spreading his hands. "Care to share? Or is it classified too?" The joke landed flat. No one laughed this time. Mara took a breath. Not to steady herself, but to choose her words. "Sir," she said, voice steady, "I've never counted people." That earned a raised eyebrow. "I've counted missions that ended without civilian casualties," she continued. "I've counted hostages who went home alive. I've counted teammates who came back breathing." She paused, letting the words settle. "But if you're asking how many enemies died because of decisions I made..." She met his eyes again. "The answer is, enough to know it's not funny." The room went completely silent. Even the Admiral stopped smiling. Mara wasn't finished. "Every operation I led was clear through this chain of command," she said, gesturing subtly to the stars around the table. "Every action was lawful, necessary, and documented. But numbers don't measure impact, sir. They just make it easier to forget that those numbers were people. No one shifted. No one coughed." Admiral Blackwood straightened in his chair. "You're lecturing me, Commander?" "No, sir," Mara replied. "I'm answering your question." A long moment passed. Then something unexpected happened. The Admiral exhaled. Slowly, he removed his glasses and set them on the table. "That was not the answer I expected," Mara nodded. "Most people expect a number." One of the captains cleared his throat. "Sir," he said quietly, "for the record, Lieutenant Commander Holt was attached to Task Group Ember. 3 rotations. 0 civilian loss incidents." Another officer added, "She planned the extraction that saved 12 aid workers in Kandahar. And the coastal interdiction," someone else said. "No shots fired." The entire cell was dismantled. The Admiral looked around, realizing something had shifted. The room no longer saw a quiet officer at the end of the table. They saw weight, experience, gravity. Blackwood folded his hands. "Commander Holt," he said, his voice more measured now, "why didn't you include those details in your presentation?" Because they weren't relevant to the mission briefing, sir, she replied. Results were. A corner of the Admiral's mouth twitched. Not a smile, something closer to respect. I owe you an apology, he said at last. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. Admirals didn't apologize lightly. My question was inappropriate. Yes, sir, Mara said simply. He nodded once. Dismissed. As she turned to leave, chairs scraped softly as officers stood, not out of protocol, but instinct. Mara paused, surprised, then continued toward the door. When it closed behind her, the room remained quiet. Finally, Blackwood spoke again. Gentlemen, he said, let that be a reminder. The most dangerous people in this Navy aren't the loud ones. No one disagreed. And somewhere down the hall, Lieutenant Commander Mara Holt walked on, uncelebrated, uncounted, carrying the kind of record no joke could ever touch. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more.